I'd like to open our time with a reading from Terry Tempest Williams, who's a writer located in Southwest Virginia. The eyes of the future are looking back at us, and they are praying for us to see beyond our own time. They are kneeling with hands clasped that we might act with restraint, that we might leave room for the life that is destined to come. To protect what is wild is to protect what is gentle. Perhaps the wilderness we fear is the pause between our own heartbeats, the silent space that says we live only by grace. Wilderness lives by this same grace. Wild mercy is in our hands. So I'm grateful to have a chance to share what we're doing at Springhouse to like-minded people. We really resonate with the WSS approach of like whole system educational redesign as a way to address, I think you used the word poly crisis. Yeah, all the different forms of oppression and crises that we're dealing with this at this time. We view it as a generational, redesigning education is a generational effort to transform our culture one person at a time. And we don't think that quick fixes will ultimately transform our culture. So I don't really need to introduce myself because Tracy read my bio, but I'll tell you just a little bit about Floyd, where Springhouse is located, and then I'll share a little bit about the history of our school and the work we're up to now to transform the purpose and practice of education. So Floyd is in Southwest Virginia, and we're right in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and it's a one stoplight town. So that means there's literally one stoplight in the whole town. There's 15,000 people in our county. When you live out in rural Virginia, I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin, you identify more as what county you live in as opposed to the city. So it's very rural, and Floyd is a little bit of a unique place where people come to live a different kind of lifestyle. And there's people that have lived here for generations, and there's people of different political beliefs come together around old time music. And it's a really vibrant small town in Virginia where we're surrounded by a lot of towns that have that are more depressed and in decline. So it's been a really unique place for us to start a really different form of education. And I think there's a lot of openness where we live to living differently. And because we're in such a small community, it really supports what we're up to around building community through school. So that's a little bit about Floyd. Springhouse was started 11 years ago in 2014 as a high school with the primary purpose of changing culture. Our vision is to live in a world where all life thrives. So that's a really large vision. We don't think we'll meet it in our lifetime, if ever, but we envision a world where all people have the conditions to thrive and to live fully. And that includes the earth as well, that ecosystems have the space to regenerate and to sustain themselves. So that's always what we're working towards. And our mission, the way we work towards that, is to fundamentally transform the purpose and practice of education. So there's lots of ways to work towards a world where all life thrives. And the way that we've chosen is to fundamentally transform the purpose and practice of education. We think that education is one of the greatest leverage points we have to change culture, because everyone goes through an educational experience full-time for some of the most formative years of their life. And education is the way in which a culture passes down its knowledge and skills and values from one generation to the next. And we view that our current educational system is passing down the values of our capitalist post-industrial society, and then it's perpetuate that culture, and our culture's values are perpetuating themselves through our educational design, which doesn't mean that there aren't people working within that system with great intentions, but the system, the force of the system is very strong in perpetuating itself. And I'm sure this goes without saying that our world has many, many challenges right now. Yeah, I'm not gonna spend too much time talking about the problem of education, because I'm sure that a lot of us are probably all on the same page with that. I think what's really exciting is that school could be so different, and has been different, and is different in different parts of the world, and has been different in different points of our human history. And schools can be a really powerful vehicle for change, because we get to choose what kind of values and skills and practices that we're passing down from one generation to the next. And so as we've been experimenting at Springhouse, starting with our high school, we've always asked ourselves that question, which is, if we were to design education today based on everything that's happening, what would be needed, and how would we design education? And what we found, and I'm sure others can relate, is that the way that we've all been taught, either just through going through the educational system just ourselves as students, or especially as when people are trained educators, which most of our staff is actually not trained educators, which has worked to our advantage, I believe. It's really hard to unlearn the ways in which some of our even just basic assumptions we have about education, and what it means to educate, and what schools should look like. So I'll talk more about what we've learned after our 11 years, and our educational approach that we now share. But we started as a high school, which is a really challenging place to start in our culture with adolescents. Not so much because adolescents themselves are challenging, but more because of all of the cultural pressure on high school and this time of life preparing for college, where I think families are more likely to be open to an alternative form of education when students are younger, and it feels more risky when students get older, I think, to start doing things that look really different from what we're used to. So that has been a very interesting journey. And very soon after starting supporting adolescents in our high school, we started supporting young adults, because young adults, including myself, are really gravitating towards Springhouse just to be a part of it and to have their own development supported. So we started supporting young adults. And then we also started supporting just adults in our community and leadership development for our local nonprofit leaders. So viewing education more than just the traditional K through 12 and college structure. And now we have an elementary school that we're starting this year in a week. And our program is going to be a two-way language immersion program, because Floyd now has a lot of asylum seekers from Spanish-speaking countries. Especially for the size of Floyd, we have a lot. And what happens is, once someone's here from a family, then other family members come to live with them. And so we anticipate that this community in Floyd will only grow. So we're really excited to be bringing in the cultural exchange of speaking two languages as a school community, and also to be serving younger ages. And this year we're starting to support the elders and the older people in our community. So we're becoming more truly intergenerational, which is what we've wanted to be from the beginning, because learning doesn't happen in these siloed age groups like our traditional system has designed, which doesn't mean it's really helpful to be sometimes with your age-based peers, but there's so much that can be learned through intergenerational community as well. So that's kind of where we're at, and that's a little bit on about our journey. And for the past 2 years, we've really taken stock over like everything that we've done to experiment with our curriculum over the years. In the beginning, we sort of, because it was just a new school and we didn't really know what we were doing. We found examples of schools that we thought were great, and we sort of implemented what they were doing and experimented with that as a starting point. And then over the years, we've learned more and experimented a lot. And the students that have been a part of the school for the first 11 years have been really foundational too in helping us shape the curriculum that we offer. And we, over the past 2 years, really had the discipline and took the time to articulate our approach so that we can share it. Because people ask us all the time, like, are you a Montessori school? Are you a Waldorf school? And we're not. We're doing something that has emerged and is unique to us, but also we think can be shared in a way that doesn't replicate what we're doing, but just supports other people to use sort of the same principles. So we call this sourced education, and the purpose is for cultural renewal. That's what we believe the purpose of education should be for, is cultural renewal. And there's 4 different qualities of sourced education, the new educational paradigm that we feel is needed at this time. And the first one is probably the hardest to talk about and explain. But the first is the education should be vitality centered. So centering life itself. Yeah, it's sort of hard to put a too fine of a point on what it means to be vitality centered. And so I don't really want to try, but the learning and the community, if it's not bringing out the life itself, life in all of us and the ways in which we're all connected, then we don't really believe it's really that different. The second is we believe in this, like the educational paradigm that's needed is intergenerational and also diverse. So like I mentioned, having school communities that span different ages and also bring together different types of people with different backgrounds and different beliefs and different ways that they identify. It's also holistic, so supporting the whole person, not just only focusing on the rational cognitive or only focusing on the more creative intuitive, but the whole person. And it's also place-based, where we believe that learning should be integrated and responsive to the community that it's a part of, including the earth, where the school's located. So those are our 4 qualities of a new educational paradigm. So vitality-centered, intergenerational and diverse, place-based, and holistic. And then, oh, you know what? I was going to share some slides so that you could see some pictures. Let me do that. I feel like that's helpful. Okay, let me pull them up real quick. Oh, you know what? Nope. Here we go. All right, I'm assuming you can see this. Okay, great. So here's a little picture of our school. We're very small. This is just our high school and staff. And here's our vision and mission. This is the inside of our building. Our building was donated to us 6 years ago, and it used to be a Chinese medicine center. So it's got this beautiful sort of Asian inspired architecture. We're super fortunate. Here's just a few other pictures. We have this little bus donated to us, which is very fun. And our campus also includes, our campus is 11 acres and includes some really sweet spots in the woods and with a creek. Just a few pictures of our high school. This is a spiral of lights ritual that we do every year near the solstice. This was during COVID, so everyone has masks on. A few pictures of some of our adult programs and our community meals. So I'll talk about that in a bit, but we welcome in our broader community. And then this is the slide I wanted. So I just shared about the 4 different qualities of a new educational paradigm. And then we have 3 principles that our curriculum follows, and the curriculum that we've designed, Source Education, is intergenerational. And so it goes from childhood to adolescence to young adulthood, and then elderhood. But these principles that I'm about to mention are woven throughout in developmentally appropriate ways for each age group. So our principles are: 1, around community, that community is the crucible for learning. We believe, and I'm sure everyone can resonate with this, that community is the foundation for learning, and that if we don't feel a sense of safety and belonging in our community that we're learning a part of, learning doesn't really happen. And also that community and interdependence are essential to the cultural renewal needed at this time. And so we can do that in our school community and also teach how to build community. And we do that in specific ways that I'll get to in a moment. The second principle is around knowledge, what we need to know. We believe we need to know about ourselves. We need to develop self-awareness, the context we live in, so our world today, and then also about what's possible, like inspiration for something new. And then the other principle is around participating in our local place. So we don't view education as simply a way to prepare to go and be in the world and be a force of good in the world, but to just start practicing that while in, like, through school, as an example, and just as a way to be a part of the community and a part of just starting to feel that interdependence of place and including the earth. I can share a little bit of like some concrete examples of how we live into these principles. And I'll also say that we have published a book called Source Education that I can put a link in the chat in a bit. So it's much more thorough. And we have, in the past 2 years, we operate a letterpress printing studio in our school basement. So we actually self-publish books and different forms of art through like printed art to further our message as well. So I'll put that in the chat. So if you're interested in learning more, you can kind of see it all in one place. So some of the ways in which we practice community, we have 3 different practices, generally, like kind of categories. So one is around shared values. The next is around community practices. And then the third is rites and rituals. So we have 6 values as a community. They are connection, individuality, resiliency, trust, creativity, and integrity. And for each of these values, we also have concrete ways that we practice the value. So oftentimes I go into schools and the values are kind of written up on the walls, but there's not really an integration into the school community. Like I don't remember the values of my high school, but I definitely know that I can kind of picture them like up on the wall, but it wasn't something we really ever talked about or practiced. So we have 3 practices for each of our values in ways that we concretely practice. Like for instance, one of our practices in trust is asking for help when I need it and believing in myself and what is within me. So those are like concrete ways. And we read these every Monday morning and reflect on them. And also this is part of how we assess our learning. So we don't have grades, but we track our students and ourselves as a staff. It's like where we're at with these values and how we're practicing them and areas of growth and areas of strength for us. So we really live into them when we view these as like the values and the practices that are needed to transform the paradigm and the culture that we're in. So that's shared values. Community practices, we know that to build community where people feel safe and they feel both a sense of connection and a sense that their uniqueness is celebrated and they can be who they are, that doesn't just happen, that you have to intentionally design for that. And so we do things like we dance together once a week, not like choreography, but dance just to be with our bodies and express ourselves in more of an embodied way and less of a thinking, sharing ourselves way, like we, like our most of our time together. So we dance together, we sing together. We primarily sang shape note in the shape note tradition, which is a American singing tradition that came about actually in Christian congregations, where they devised a new form of writing music that made it easier for the congregation to read music, even if they didn't know how to read or weren't trained in music. So we're not a Christian school, but we borrow the shape note tradition, and it's really rich 4-part harmonies. We also play games together. We have fitness time together. We all clean our buildings. So we don't have a cleaning staff or a grounds crew. We all participate in maintaining and caring for our space. We go on 3 trips a year together, traveling for the week as a practice. And we also do things like host community meals. I showed a picture of that, like all these people in our big, what we call the Great Hall, where we welcome in the community to share food together. So those are some of the ways that we intentionally build community. And then also rites and rituals. So we view the community, like we view our school community as a lot more than just a school, and more of like it's like we don't grow up and mature in a vacuum. Our community is so central to our own growth and our own maturity and our own seeing of ourselves clearly. And so we do things like rites of passage for one another, rituals honoring growth of our students. And as a staff, we'll do that with one another too, viewing that as the community's role to mirror back what we see in one another. And then we also do things like I showed in that picture of spiral lights, the candles in the center of our building. Do things like that together to just, again, be together in a different way, honor what we believe to be sacred and things like that. So that's how we build community. And the examples I'm giving are mostly from our high school, but we do this differently in our different programs and with different age groups. And some of these things we do like just with the high schoolers or just with the adults and just with the elementary, and some of the things we do all together. So we're always considering what's just developmentally appropriate to be with your age group, and when are opportunities for authentic and generative intergenerational spaces. So knowledge, this is kind of, there's a lot I could say here. This is the like what we're learning. And this is probably the place that is the hardest for us, because it's really challenging to stray from what we have all become accustomed to of what is education and what should we be learning and what is legitimate. We are accredited, our high school is accredited, and but we don't do any standardized testing. We don't prepare students for the SAT. And our curriculum it does not look like a traditional curriculum. So we dedicate a lot of time to just learning about ourselves and cultivating self-awareness. So we do that through mentoring. We do that through what we call personal practices, where twice a week the students will start the day with something like yoga or dance or singing or just spending time in the woods or some kind of artistic practice. That's the purpose, is around getting to know themselves and developing self-awareness. And then we also have time for them to learn about adolescence or learn about childhood and the important tasks of that stage of development. So that might be things like for our elementary school, learning about boundaries and communication and very basic self-care. For our high school, it's like learning about sexuality, nutrition, self-care, personal finance, helping them prepare for their next steps. And then also doing things like just exploring more deeply who they are and reflecting on their life and everything that has contributed to where they are today. So that's all kind of in the self category. And in the cultural context, we think it's really important to know how we got here as a culture. So we do a lot of looking back at our country's history and how we got here, and like viewing our history from a holistic perspective, telling all sides of our history, including marginalized perspectives, and making the connections between what's happened in the past and what's happened today. And also looking at our current cultural challenges. So including climate change, but other current challenges too, like our healthcare system or immigration or racial inequity in our country, or our political system, things like that. So getting like developing a really, I would say from my experience of our graduates, really nuanced understanding of where we're at and how we've gotten here and how all these different systems are connected to each other and how the past influences the present and things like that. And then being able to learn from our mistakes and design something different. And then we also learn about possibility, primarily from looking to the earth. So this is more of like where the sciences come in, but our learning is interdisciplinary, but this is where more of the sciences come in, where like we think that one of the best places to go for inspiration for what could be for our world is by looking at the earth and how the earth evolved, how the earth functions, things like physics, and looking at the patterns and living systems principles that emerge from the way the earth has evolved for billions of years, and applying that to human design systems. And I'll say that our learning is interdisciplinary, and we do pull out math. We've gone back and forth for years. Math is this really interesting. I just think we have a lot wrapped up in math in our Western culture around worth and what it means to be intelligent. You have to be good at math to be viewed as intelligent. I think there's a lot of wounding in our culture around math. So we've struggled with math and how do we implement math. And where we've landed is we do pull out math to really build the skills, the foundational skills to be able to implement into our interdisciplinary courses, and also to just work that logical part of our brain. And we're really grateful we use the Making Math Meaningful curriculum, which is the Waldorf-inspired curriculum, as a jumping off point. It's a great curriculum. And then we also pull out Spanish, because right now we're welcoming in our Spanish-speaking community into our school, and mostly in our elementary school, but we also want our high schoolers and staff to be able to communicate with everyone in our community. And then things like writing skills and all kinds of other skills, artistic skills, public speaking skills, collaboration skills, those are all woven in through our classes. So then finally, place. We think it's really important to participate in our local community, as I've said, and not be like an isolated bubble. And so some of the ways we do that are by inviting in a lot of guests. So our facilitators aren't necessarily experts in what they're teaching. So like it's really common to just bring in someone to like co-teach a whole class with one of our facilitators from the community. We do a lot of field trips. We also do our 3 trips a year to like get to go learn firsthand from places we're studying. And then we do internships. So once a week, our students will intern or apprentice in our community with either artisans or with businesses. And so that's been a really tangible way for us to connect with our local community. And in our elementary school, they're doing more like, we're calling it like their community classroom, where it's like every Thursday, they're just going out into our community and having new experiences. We also believe it's important to share our learning. So what we're learning is not what everybody learns in school. And we have adults come in all the time and be like, I want to take these classes. And so like as a part of every class, it culminates with some kind of sharing of the learning through some medium. So they might be publishing a zine, or they might be doing a play, or They might go like do a flash mob in a local place to somehow like share and inspire and inform beyond themselves. And then we also believe it's important to care for the earth. So we do that both through our own efforts. We're working towards being carbon neutral. As a school, we're also working on increasing the biodiversity of our campus and also developing a set of ecological standards for when we consume food as a school or we buy anything, to have a set of standards that we use to buy things. And then we also contribute to local sustainability efforts too. So I think I'll pretty much stop there. Sometimes when I share about Springhouse, I share about the importance of supporting holistic human development. This is, so I guess I'm not stopping there. I guess I am going to talk about this. We've been really inspired by the work of Bill Plotkin. I don't know if people are familiar with his work. He's an eco-depth psychologist and a good friend of Springhouse. And this is his soul-centric map of human development. So it starts over here with childhood, and there's so much to get into here, and he has a great book called Nature and the Human Soul. But this is a developmental framework where the goal is cultural renewal. And like part of how we support the cultural renewal or a new paradigm is through, I mean, ultimately it's about like supporting holistic development, where if we're all supported to grow into like fully mature adults that can contribute and innovate, that's what we need. And there's things that we can know about our world that help us to do that. So really we just want to, like, the importance of supporting holistic development is so essential. And that starts with the staff and the leaders of a school, because you can't pass on what you don't have. And so our staff development, our staff expectations are really rigorous, because as I said, if you don't focus on your own development, you don't have anything to pass down. So open to any questions, and I'll stop sharing my screen, but we built this sailboat a few years ago. It's a 22-foot sailboat that we did as a project, which was awesome. And then up here we have, this is an example of one of our internships back in early days of COVID, where we were masking outside. This is a local sculptor working with one of our students. And on the bottom right, we have this was part of our fitness time with some students running as part of their